Hi guys,
Hey,
Oh,
how are you?
Giovanni, we're very well indeed. We're very well indeed. How about you? Are you okay?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you both.
Yeah, Giovanni, lovely to see you, mate. Bright and brazy. I feel like it's
Oh
been
yeah.
donkey years.
Huh?
I feel like it's been donkey years. It's been quite some time since our last conversation.
True, true.
yeah,
But it's good to see you guys now. Happy New Year. I haven't had the chance to say Happy New Year live yet.
yeah. Happy to see you too.
Yeah,
Good
happy
to
New
see
Year.
you.
Yeah, really delighted to have you today. Certainly looking forward to speaking to you. Look, outrageously excited about today's conversation. You know what? You and I have known each other for quite some time, and we couldn't have started the Myelin Pop without you being the first one on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. This is gonna be
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, it's gonna be fun, I'm sure. So look, it's not gonna be a classic podcast in the sense of us asking you questions, but rather it's kind of an informal conversation. We'll try to pick your brain and get your nuggets of wisdom on different topics, neurotechnology from investment to regulatory, and everything in between. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's get the ball rolling. Just to give you an idea, it's gonna be we'll have 5 different blocks. 4 blocks. We'll be asking you questions about you, your personality, your life, and everything, your magic. And then the fifth block, we'll put the ball in your court so that you can ask us questions as well, if you do have any questions for us.
I can always come up with questions. It would be fun. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Lovely, lovely. You know what? I'm gonna start with a slightly unusual and question, which is, you know what? Our parents influence us and shape our lives in different ways. I learned that you come from an entrepreneurial family, ironically owning a hair salon despite you being a board man. So, how did your childhood and your parents influence the Giovanni we know today?
So I think they instilled the concept of value in me very, very early. So, as opposed to asking parents for money to go out when you're 10, 12, 15, 18, 25, 30, and parents just constantly hand it out without really having to work for it. Very early on, I think I was 7 years old when they opened up my first bank account. And then they would also show me every single week on if I had chores, if I wanted to go do something. I remember like my biggest memory on that was I found a bicycle that I wanted, and I was really big into off-roading on bikes when I was probably 13. And I just remember I had no concept of like high level of money value of like really what it took. And this was a long time ago, and I found this bike and it was $800. And I was like, I really my mother goes, "Do you understand how long it's going to take you to earn that money to get that bike?" And I said, "Yeah, but I could start somewhere." And I ended up doing my chores. They ended up giving me the money that I make. I would sweep the floors in the hair salon. I would take out the garbages for $1 every time I went over to the nail and spa and medicure pedicure side. And it took me like, I don't know, like 6 months, I think, to earn this money. And then I finally bought my bike. But, this whole sense of instant gratification of, oh, mom and dad, I want that. Well, here you go, son. Here's your money for that. Go get that. And then it just shows you that you constantly have to work for something if you're going to ultimately get what you want. And I think that's what I learned at a very early age.
Lovely. Great, such an inspiring story. And another story is I learned that you joined the MedTech industry at the age of 23. Having known you for quite some time, you eat and breathe MedTech. It seems like your hobby horse and your cup of tea. How did MedTech become such an important thing in your life? And where does this MedTech passion stem from?
So I started, as you're right, I was 23. And It was my first real job and career. I mean, I did things before that, but nothing for very long before and I was super blessed and fortunate to find the industry that I've been in now for a long time, 15 years. And so it was one of these things where it was medical devices and coming back from a family of hairstylists, right? I mean, you don't really have awareness of these high-tech gadgetries and things. And to be honest, and I'll put this on the air, is when I started at 23, I didn't know what an engineer was. And when you said engineer, I didn't even know what that meant. And so I was starting from very white sheet of paper. And when you start learning about how these things are made, the complexities of them, and then they have to get clinically tested, and then all of these very technical things, which take years and a lot of money before they can even be commercialized to actually help the patients that the whole idea was started with. It was just an absolute fascinating world that I had no idea of, and I think I fell in love with the complexity, and even more so, I think I fell in love with the idea that I'll never be a doctor, I'll never be an engineer, I'll never be all these things that I have super high envious love for at this stage of people who create things or physicians who fix things, and now these innovative physicians who have fixed things in people, but they also have great ideas and are very complementary for developing innovation. And, coming from a hairstylist family, these blue collar workers, and I love them to death, they're my family. But there's just certain things that you aren't made aware of at a young age. And it's just the family that you're born into. And it's not for right or wrong. It was just who I was. And then, you have this big world of this new concept of technical abilities of developing technology that save lives, but the amount of money that goes into it and the engineering that goes in the clinical testing that goes into it and the history of how medical device regulations came to be about. And it was like this never ending story of things that you could possibly learn. And then the people that you meet and the stories about those people, how they got into the industry and what they did, it became an obsession. So that's really how my story ended up going. It went from I had no idea what I was doing. And then you just realize how much you don't know and how much you could learn. And then it becomes an obsession that you'll never learn it all. And you have these amazing moments of what has MedTech done for me, which has taken me around the world and has allowed me to meet brilliantly hardworking people like yourselves on this, and being around and following your journey and seeing some of the entrepreneurial things that you guys have done. And you expand that and you times that by 1,000 and you realize that you're part of this industry of just incredibly brilliant, hardworking people, all for the sake of knowing that they probably could make a lot more money elsewhere, but they do it for the sake of changing human lives for the better. It gives me purpose, and I wouldn't do anything differently.
I can tell. You know what they say, if you love what you do, you never work a single day in your life. I think it's such a rocky road being in this industry, but it's just like that's a thing.
I've lost all my head hair and my beard is starting to turn white out of all the fun that I'm having.
Yeah. So let's talk about you then. Basically, you wear many hats. You've got your fingers in every pie. So you are a managing partner of Lifeblood Capital, MedTech Executive Recruiter, investor, and even a board member. If you were to introduce yourself in one sentence, what would that sentence be?
Medical device recruiter. I love that full stop. Most people give it a very tarnished connotation of being a recruiter. There's a plethora of recruiters out there that have absolutely abused the power of social media and emails and mass blasting of emails. And it's a quick way to make a buck. And there's also a lot of companies that take shortcuts and try to feed into that, which, if those people weren't making money somehow, they would eventually go away. But someone's got to be paying them somehow. And that means there's likely a lot of mistakes that are actually happening along the way for this quick buck that's looking to be made. And so, unfortunately, there's this connotation of recruiter that's not really well accepted, just because it comes kind of like with a lawyer, right? Most people don't think lawyer and they're like, oh, wow, my favorite person in the world. Same thing with recruiter. But if you ever been through an experience where it was the lawyer that saved your life, or the lawyer that saved your wealth, or the lawyer that saved your business, all of a sudden you have a very newfound respect for a lawyer. If you have a really great partner as a recruiter who is not industry agnostic, but hyper focused and basically can be your whisperer of how you design your team and how you find the right people that ultimately are the ones that enable a company to grow prosperously. Finding and building a relationship with a proper recruiter is invaluable for a company. Most don't ever get a chance to have that experience. And hence the reason why on this mass level, recruiters get a pretty tarnished reputation. And so, I've had enough successes and I've had enough amazing relationships to know that it's worth a passion project of mine, not only to stay in medical device and to stay hyper specifically focused in an industry, but also to spend the rest of my career trying to make a dent into making a difference on that connotation of recruiter. And if I can possibly give as many companies as I can a good experience with what a good recruitment firm can do, then that's my little contribution. So yes, to your point, I have my fingers in a lot of things. And I think being so hyperly specifically focused in one industry, I don't work with the big corporate strategics. So I work with small to medium sized enterprises and startups. And usually within that realm of company size, it's companies that are constantly looking for capital. And so when I have the venture capitalists who hire my firm to put in new CEOs for their portfolio companies when the timing's right, or they get out of a board meeting and they realize they needed a great chief commercialization officer or whatever that board level decision is, then I get brought in and we do a great job doing that. And then we get to work with those companies on building out the rest of that company. Or it happens sometimes where we just meet them very early on and we build out their R&D all the way through commercialization. But getting that ability to build those teams usually comes after about 5,000 to 8,000 conversations with the company saying that they're looking for capital. And so we've been able to, over the years, build really wonderful relationships with investors, and we've been able to facilitate a lot of introductions that fortunately have led to a tremendous amount of successes for companies, somewhat over 300 million at this point for about 78 companies. And we've done it on both sides of the pond, meaning here in the United States and over in Europe and Israel. We're not investment bankers, so we do that more for, we'll call it philanthropy or good karma back into the ecosystem. But what that's done is it's enabled us to learn how money flows. We ourselves have made investments into about 7 small companies early stage and learn what that really means to be an investor. But also we've invested into a few funds. So what does it really mean to be a limited partner? And we paid for that education. Some of it's been insightful. Some of it's been horrific. Some of it's been okay. And we're still waiting for the great success to happen. But welcome to MedTech. That just takes time. And that's why they call it patient money. And I think throughout all of this learning lesson and sticking in this industry, between hosting conferences, which you guys have been a part of before and you've seen, and we've been able to bring our network on site to beautiful locations, which has been a passion project of ours. So these conferences have been a lot of fun. The investment side of it, but always coming back to we are recruiters at the end of the day, make no mistake, that's what we do. I think all of that paid for learning experience of hitting this ecosystem in various facets has enabled us to get some of the credibility that we needed to jump on a couple boards. So I'm on a publicly traded board right now, as well as a privately held board. And even that has been very insightful of what does it mean to be on a board? And then you understand the board dynamics and the politics that go along with that. So I can make my story very, very complex, or I can make it incredibly simple. And 15 years later, I'm a medical device recruiter and super proud to be one. And it's taken me around the world and helped me build some really wonderful teams and also meet some incredible entrepreneurs with even better stories than mine, yours included.
Thank you. Appreciate that, mate. You know what? It's just unbelievable. Like you've been on both sides of the mountains, like an NP, limited partner, and also an investor, and also a MedTech recruiter, and talking like to small companies. Like I think it's just unbelievable. It's just it's just magnificent, mate.
But that's where the passion comes from, right? I mean, you can't just sit there and cherry pick with your rifle and say, I only talk to companies that have $100 million and, they only have to do VP level searches. And like, you can't do that. You need some of that. You need to balance out your life and portfolio of what we do as a profession. But, our whole thing is if we're going to be MedTech startup recruiters and MedTech small to medium-sized enterprise recruiters, and we have to be able to help and show up to these conferences with credibility and a reputation. It can't be transactional, right? Like there's been a lot of times that we do a lot of effort. I will call it effort, not work, but effort to help and build this community. And, there isn't a solid line of that coming back to us, right? So there's a lot of karma that we throw in the pot of medical device for sure. But at the same time, there's been too many opportunities that has come back to us that are completely unexplainable. And that's the power of karma, at least in my world. And so as long as we're just doing the right thing, and I think all of us were doing medical devices for the right reasons, right? I mean, I think anyone who's been in it long enough and watched television shows or read magazines and learned about other industries, there's, excuse my French, but a shit ton easier way of abilities to make money outside of medical device. But we're all here for a reason. We all stay in this absolutely masochistic industry for a reason, and it's to help other people. And so if the moment you lose sight of that, the moment you get frustrated. But I think also there's been a lot of industries that are created that are pretty empty on the moral compass and good feelings at the end of the day situation. And I think that's what keeps us here. And so glad to come very, very early and work with entrepreneurs super, super early and stick with them all the way through the end, whatever that end may be.
Brilliant. Superb. On that point, if you had to call up yourself the night before starting this job and give yourself one advice, what would that advice be?
Before I started my position?
This position.
All those years ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
This entire experience.
I would unplug the phone. I would never pick up the phone. I think if someone called me, or if I called myself and gave myself a warning of what I was going into, I think if you ask that question to any entrepreneur in medical device specifically, and maybe any entrepreneur in any industry, you might second guess yourself, right? I mean, there's a lot of pain that comes along with this, but there's also an incredible amount of reward. And I think at 23, when I started, telling myself that 10% of the time was an incredible champagne moment of bliss and experiences and euphoria of wonderful things that you've been able to accomplish and see accomplished through others. And then the other 90% was sleeping on a bed of nails and broken glass and complete pain. I don't know if I would have wanted to sign up for that at 23 years age, but I'm glad that I did. And if I were to tell myself, I would just say, do it all over again. But I probably would have been too immature to even recognize someone telling me that, just like I've been told a lot of advice that I ended up ultimately having to figure out the hard way on my own anyway. So my answer to that is I would hope that the phone wouldn't get picked up if I called myself at 23 years of age.
Such a brilliant answer. And just on the pain point, I guess the harder the battle, the sweeter the victory. So you're fully aware of that. Like it needs to be a bit like tough before it gets easier. Okay.
And by the way, our famous line together of what you taught me many years ago, which I still to this day say it very regularly, and I love, and I know you know which one I'm talking about. I would rather have you say it. So when you are in hell,
just keep going. You have no options. Right. You've got no options.
That's right. That's right.
It's inevitable. It's inescapable. That's the thing. No, I think I've learned that from you, mate. You're such a disciplined person. You just keep going. I think you've got that discipline. You've got that attitude and mindset, and we've learned so much from you. And we talk about that, like being an advisor to the company and advising us and sharing your network. I think we've learned, and you know what? I just take my hat off to you. You've been such an amazing advisor. Let's get into the nitty-gritty details of today's topic, which is neurotech. You've seen so many companies. You've talked to many neurotech founders and startups. So I want to start with the first question as far as neurotech is concerned. So this brain-machine interface has gained momentum and popularity over the last few years, very recently with Elon Musk's Neuralink announcement. So how do you see this industry? And how do you see this industry growing and in the very foreseeable future?
So I'll use an analogy, and then I'll jump into more specificity. But there is a great industry within MedTech, which is the transcatheter heart valve industry. And if you look at, and I was actually just in Israel last week, where one of the very first, if not the first, transcatheter aortic valve implant technology was acquired. I want to say that was in 2004, I'm sorry, 2004. And it was PVT, the company PVT by Edwards Lifesciences. So that was 20 years ago. And it was for that time, a massive, massive win in terms of an acquisition. The acquisition is 125 million, I think. Today, 125 million it's good. It's great. But if you look at what Edwards Lifesciences is today, $1 billion company plus, and their premises, they're a heart valve or structural heart company. They have other technologies, but basically that acquisition is what made Edwards today. It was quite a win for them, right? So 125 million to be what they are today is absolutely incredible. But the point of the story is that's one of 4 heart valves. The other 2 that have been on the Wild West for the entirety of my career, which are the mitral and the tricuspid valve. I literally have seen these things come to market, I should say, come to acquisition, come to financing, come to market. I actually can say that with MitraClip and when it was approved by the FDA. And now it's, still one of the only FDA approved transcatheter mitral valve repair technologies, right? And so there's billions of dollars in acquisitions in the heart valve space. There is multiple, I'll maybe say hundreds of companies over the past decade plus that have tried to go after these markets. And if you look at the actually commercially viable technologies that are in clinical use, between all 4 valves on a transcatheter level, it's less than a handful. And maybe if you want to include Europe, it's certainly still less than 2 handfuls. And so what happens when you have this very futuristic, incredibly challenging, clinically challenging, regulated with challenges or challenging through regulation styles of technology? In the earlier days, while everyone's working super hard to develop these things and clinically test and create the regulations, and it all sounds so cool and so futuristic, when you look back, you get to realize how futuristic it is, because it does take 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years for the ecosystem and market to mature around the technology for acceptance. And you have these entrepreneurs that are waking up every day, and that's their life. They're building this hard technology that is new, and it sounds super cool, and it's going to change mankind. But if it's early days, you got to be patient, because while you're ready, the market, the regulators, the capital, they're not ready, because it's not very visible on how they're going to make their money back. And then you have market dynamics that are completely complex. Like there was over $1 billion of heart valve acquisitions in 2015, and still to this very day, none of them are clinical or commercially viable. None of them are actually commercially making sense. So then what happens? The very few acquirers that are even possible for that technology get super skittish about any other additional technologies. What does that even mean further? Well, if the acquirers are skittish, then how clear does that make a potential exit strategy? And if the exit strategy is not super clear or scary, then does that make capital or venture capital for return on investment scared off too? And then it's this trickle down effect, which even sometimes elongates the challenge of building very, very futuristic technology. So when you think about brain-computer interfaces, when you think about invasive brain-computer interfaces, when you think about total artificial hearts, when you think about every surgery using surgical robotics, not, a billion or whatever $1 trillion mark, I'm making it up, with robotics, and then you have a publicly traded company like Intuitive Surgical, followed by tens of surgical robotics companies in various therapeutic spaces. And then you have all of a sudden, still to this day, how many surgeries are done using robotics? Sub 10%. I mean, I'm out of tune of it, like the exact specificity, but it wasn't even all that many years ago. It was still like 3%. And, when you look at all the media and all the movies and all the articles that release surgical robotics, surgical robotic, you think they're taking over the world. Well, how many hospitals can buy $1 million machine and then have the cost to actually then train the people who are going to use robotics from, decades or hundreds of years of using your hands to perform surgery, right? So these absolute game-changing technologies in medical and the systems that follow, we happen to be living in a media-rich ecosystem and world now where everyone's on their phone and everyone wants to be a storyteller now, and the media is great and but it's much more complex than that to actually change a market. And brain computer interfaces and neurotech overall is in its infancy of really coming out there and really changing the world, and it will. There's no doubt. I can't tell you if it's 20 years from now or 50 years from now that, the children who are born are going to say brain computer interface probably as their first word. And it's going to be used in more of a commercial setting or a direct to consumer setting, who knows? But regulations have to change. Capital has to change. Acquirers have to be out there, and distributors of those devices that they acquire have to be installed and in place and mature and very cleanly understood for this whole ecosystem of innovation financed for acquisition, or even commercialized products that want to go public, but then have to have continuous product development behind them. This all has to make sense. And that takes, once again, excuse my French, a shit ton of time that most people are very impatient for, because now we have these phones in our hands that everyone wants immediate gratification. Oh, by the way, there's someone at the door from Amazon. I just ordered something 5 minutes ago and now it's already here, right? It's a very, very complex world that we live in now, and medical devices is still very slow.
Yeah, it's still early days. But you know what? Rome wasn't built in a day, was it? It's just, it takes quite some time. So it's an exorbitant amount of time. But I think we're getting that. Samara, maybe want to carry on.
Yeah. Another question, Jayo. So based on your experience, so founders in MedTech and Neurotech, what's the mistake that made in hiring teams?
Shortcuts. So there's a lot of mistakes because people are incredibly complex. But once you have we'll call it fair round of financing in, I'm not talking about the super early days when it's bootstrapping, and like that's a different world. When you're bootstrapping and you're just looking for people to care and also come in and help in some capacity, that's different. But when you start finding Series A, Series B, and there's these shortcuts that these companies are taking, where to save like little money, I mean, losing on the optimal person be over $5,000, right? And egos get in the way, where the perfect head of clinical affairs was very open about the fact that, for some reason she needed 145 and your offer was 140. And you're like, well, not doing that. Over $5,000, and you're going to walk away from a top talent, and then you're going to have to start the process all over and go waste another 3 months finding the next person. And what I've seen from my standpoint, which I can critically say is hysterical, because I hate to say I told you so, but it's sometimes that pain of losing that person, and then you're hyper aware of do I really want to do this again? Because you're going to waste more time finding that person. And this is just an example, right? So the offer comes out at 140. The candidate really needed 145, and who knows why? Maybe it was they needed to send their child to school and they've done all their finances, and like after the end of the month, they're left with this and they needed that $5,000 and they were super open about it, but you weren't going to pay that 145. You were only going to pay 140. Well, then now you're going to go out and find a person 2-3 months from now, and ultimately they're going to end up costing you 157. Who knows why? But you're going to end up paying more, and you're going to look back and you're like, what the hell was I doing? And then you wasted time and you wasted money because of these silly mistakes for talent. And it's these shortcuts of just properly saying time is money, and medical devices is a lot about time and hitting those milestones and appeasing your investors. And because think about it like from an investor standpoint, if a company raised capital and then ran out of capital but has nothing to show for it, right? I mean, they'll invest. You can raise on traction. You can raise on hitting milestones. Like when you add value to your company, that is what is attractive to investors. That's ultimately what they want to see. But if you've gone out, now you have to go raise a bridge round of financing because realistically you've done not that much with the money or not enough to show for it. And certainly the story that you promised the investors when they invested in you, you didn't even hit that story. Well, then that's when all of a sudden you're not going to be investable or easily as investable for the next round, right? And investors, they know. I mean, and keep in mind, when they gave you that money and you promised to hit those milestones, that's where scalability comes in. Like not a 2-person or 1-person or 4-person startup company is going to be able to scale themselves out and do all of that just with the money that they raised, right? You need more people to be able to do that. And without being able to properly design a team, properly put in the right people so that everyone's working in the same direction to hit those milestones so that the CEO or the executives who are raising capital can then go out and tell a more investable story. That's how this whole game works. And when, sometimes my biggest thing is like silly mistakes are made from shortcuts, egos, and wanting to win these small little things that ultimately cause you to lose long term.
Oh, I totally get you on that. And in terms of the attitude, I mean, I was listening to the CEO of Spotify was saying, recruit for attitude, train for skills. So in terms of attitude, how do you basically choose the right person? How do you assess the attitude? Because more often than not, you hire the best person, like you have that impression it's the best person for the company, and then that person shows their true color, and then it's no longer the best person. Like, how do you assess that early on?
So I call them the 2 E's, like E as an elephant. And there's entrepreneurs and there's employees. And early days startup companies and even small to medium-sized companies cannot really afford the employee mentality. When you start getting into big companies and you can hide and you can get away with doing your little thing here and there to justify your employment, that's when you can be an employee. But the employee who shows up at 9 and can't wait and takes an hour and 15-minute lunch, not an hour lunch, and then looks at the clock and says it's almost 5 o'clock. And by the way, the door's hitting their booty at 5 o'clock because they started packing up at 4:50, right? That's an employee. An entrepreneur is someone who it doesn't have to be the CEO. It doesn't have to be an entrepreneur starting the company or even the one that's completely obsessed and is taking a shower on a Saturday afternoon and like, oh my God, that's the idea that I got to implement in my company, where you just can't even sleep anymore because your company is just inside your head all the time. That's definitely an entrepreneur, but not everyone has to be that level of entrepreneur. It's the people who want to. It's not just about the money. It has to be about the experience. Ultimately, is investing in themselves, right? I mean, if you're not the CEO, but maybe you're a clinical research associate, right? You're helping out with the clinical trial, and you're not a director and you're not a VP, and it doesn't mean that you can't be an entrepreneur, because why not do your job and your position better than your boss expects you? Because only good can come of that. You either identify quickly that you have a bad boss, and then you know that about yourself, and then you got to go find a better company. Or if you have a great boss, that boss enables you to grow and do new things and add more things onto your personal resume. And then you become more valuable. And then you are able to grow quicker. And then you're able to grow yourself quicker within that company or in the general market and go do bigger things somewhere else. And so this entrepreneurial mentality is about investing in yourself as well as the company and respecting the position that you're in and being grateful for the position that you have to be able to influence something. The employee can't wait for the paycheck because they can't wait for the weekend, and they can't wait to do anything else except what they actually get paid for. And that's the employee. And you can't build companies on employees. You can build companies on entrepreneurs.
Yeah, totally. And this is something we make unambiguously clear during the interview. If you're here for the 9-to-5 job, you're better off working for a bank, with all the respect to all the banks in the world. It's just not it's not your thing. It's not for you. You need that person who, you know, works very hard, boots on the ground, and get things done. And that person is prepared to stay the long hours and get things done. I mean, the 9-to-5, with all respect, I mean, it just takes you to nowhere.
And I realize that I didn't answer your question definitively on how do you tease that out in an interview process. You know, first and foremost, I will never be able to give you a silver bullet answer. 15 years of interviewing people, if I had the silver bullet answer, I would put some IP around it and I would sell that, and maybe I would be my own multi-millionaire entrepreneur in figuring out how to interview purpose. But people are people. So, you know, there's ways that you can get to it quicker. There's ways that you can understand, you know, I hate to go Freudian, but people who have never experienced pain or don't come from entrepreneurial backgrounds, meaning that mindset, they haven't had to work for it. You can tease those out through questions. You know, you don't have to lay them on a leather couch and ask, you know, how their parents treated them or where their parents are now. But, you know, there's aspects of, you know, how quickly did you finish university? What was your favorite project, you know, before going to university? What was your first job? Right? Like there's just questions that you can design about their history, and it tells how their processes are. You know, what are your hobbies? Right? Sometimes people have incredible hobbies that you're like, wow, that's fascinating. And that's a really hard hobby. So it tells about their personality. And so those are the kind of things that you want to tease out earlier. I mean, obviously you want to ask things like, why are you here? Why do you want to be here? And what's going to motivate you to be here? And, you know, my thing is I ask people who join my firm, for example, what can I do to help you grow here so that you can tell me what you really want to do when you grow up? And that tells you where they really want to go. And then where do they really, really want to go? Well, if they know that you want to grow here, well, okay, fine. You want to start your own business someday. Well, great. Well, not only do you need to be what you need to be for me, but I could start teaching you about the business and the back end and what does it really mean to watch human behavior. And so I know that if you're getting what you need out of what I can offer, and I'm getting what I need off of what you are bringing to the table, then this is going to be at least a great relationship as long as we last, and hopefully a friendship forever. But you need to be able to ask people what they want and what direction they're heading. And then you have to also understand their fabric of where they came from. And there's really, really great storytellers out there, but with some properly designed questions, you can figure out who's the bullshitter in the room.
Yeah, totally. Over to you, Sam. What to carry on?
Yeah, I'd like to go with the recent Neuralink and Elon Musk announcement. So, are you more optimistic with the brain-computer interface and future? So, the future of investment in BCI, are we going for more investment in the market there? What's your general sentiment here?
If you look at the money that has been put into some of these invasive BCIs, we'll start in the more intense markets. Look at who really is investing in those. That's public information, right? So I mean, there's a handful of invasive BCIs out there. Oh, this company raised X amount of money. This company raised X amount of money. Go look at their portfolios. A lot of it's foundation money. A lot of it is governmental money. A lot of it is philanthropic money in various capacities. A lot of it is money that is not associated with the typical 10-year horizon for a venture capital firm. And this goes back to what we talked about earlier about the intensity of new genres of technology. Brain-computer interfaces are a genre of technology, and they will be a part of our future. They're going to be here. They're going to be, I can't tell you how intense they're going to be here. They could be purely for medical reasons. We could have the whole ecosystem change where regulation comes in and military comes in and consumerism comes in and all these things change that we can't even talk about today because it's so many years out in the future, where brain-computer interfaces are, who knows, the first thing that's implanted in us at 8 months of age when we're all born. You never know. But the whole point is that future of how these technologies are growing aren't 100% mainstream at this point, and it is more pointing towards the future. And until you can show commercialization, and until you can show how commercialization can turn into a return on investment, that's where the challenge of proper investing of like, okay, I can put my dollar into cryptocurrency, I can put my dollar into real estate, I can put my dollar into the stock market. But no, I'm going to hold on that. I'm going to put it in a privately held brain-computer interface company because I'm going to get more money out of that than putting it anywhere else. The moment we can answer that question is the moment that BCI is going to be mainstream investable. But for the most part, right now, when you start looking at some of these bigger press releases, you're going to be seeing a lot of very neurotech foundations, a lot of neurotech family offices, a lot of neurotech governmental support for the actual research and science that's coming up from behind it. A lot of this money is not tied necessarily to that proverbial 10-year horizon return on investment VC backed fund.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. I mean, in terms of investment, as an investor, what do you look for? I mean, if you're about to invest in a BCI company today, what would you usually, look for? Is it the founder? Is it the market? Is it the technology? I mean, more often than not, when you invest in those people, it's literally up in the air, just a pie in the sky, unproven technology, no FDA whatsoever, no clear, business plan. So what do you often invest in?
So I'm not a institutional investor. We'll call it closer to a family office, right? Like it's my money. It's what I'm looking at. It's how I want to invest. So when you think about that, I'm doing it for my reasons of wanting to take a ride. Whenever I invest that dollar, and I'm just speaking from my heart here, right? And this is what I've done for all the companies that I've invested in is, it's the sense of being a part of something. It's a sense of paying to play and going for the ride. It's a sense of investing in the entrepreneurs directly. It's the sense of not having an expectation of return on investment. What is coming from the learning process? What is coming from understanding more about the market and the technology? It's honestly like a selfish benefit of like paying for the experience of what this journey is going to look like. And also, I'm not talking about crazy dollars here either. Like, I mean, I'm not some like $45 million institutional fund, right? So we make early, very small investments. And it's really the moment I write the check, I assume that I'm never going to see that again. But the value that I place on it is the value of taking that journey with the entrepreneurs of like, what doors can I help open for them? And I'm testing myself on my own skill sets. What can we influence together of developing and maturing the market based on who we're connecting with, the experience that they're doing on hitting their milestones, the people and the relationships that you're building over time, and if it's this opportunity that they're working on together, who knows what they're going to go on to next after they have that experience, and where are they going to go next? So when I look at technology, honestly, the answer is not coming from an institutional venture capital answer that I don't know if you're looking for or not, but at least for me, it would be, is it a great story? Is the team super cool? Are they people that I like? And is there going to be an entrepreneurial lesson for me that I not only can give my benefit to them, but also take it for myself and understanding, oh, wow, that ride was interesting. Oh, that's how when they had to go look at doing their first in man, like they had to reach out to that style of clinician in that country. Really interesting. And so all of a sudden, that pay to play method that I was mentioning before is like, now when I sit on boards, I actually have the insight to be able to help out, or the insight to say, oh, I saw that in that company do that, because you have access to behind the scenes. So I don't do it for return on investment in terms of money. I do it for a plethora of other reasons that are mainly educational for myself, in addition to being able to leverage what I have and what I've built in terms of a network and my own experience, and being able to offer that up.
That's a brilliant answer, mate. It's like that feeling, that, you know, that chemistry when you meet the founder for the first time. You want to take a punt on that founder, irrespective of the outcome. You know, it's just such a brilliant answer. I think in the interest of time, we're gonna say a few quotes, famous quotes, and we just want to, you know, you tell us whether you agree with the quote, with the saying, and how much you know, it represents you and your personality. How does this sound to you?
Let's take it for a spin. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, let's get started. So the first one, I'm not sure who said this, but it takes pressure to make a diamond. Do you agree? Not, and how much it represents you?
I would say so. Yeah, I mean, I personally believe that I work well under pressure. I know some people crack and fold. I also do work proactively too, so I can understand, you know, setting a goal that might be 2 months away, and why are you spending time on it on a Thursday 8 weeks earlier, right? So I do believe in preparation and working ahead, but I also do believe that putting pressure on human behavior does create diamonds, because more often than not, most people are not proactive, and more often than not, most people are very disorganized. And so when pressure is applied, it forces focus, and when you focus, usually you create diamonds.
Yeah, diamonds. Yeah.
The second one, so on the shoulder of a giant, you can see better. So Newton said that. What do you think?
I also agree. So, you know, when people have jumped through the fire or run through the forest before and got all cut up and bloody, and you see their scars, it allows you to see a bit into the future from looking in the past. And I believe that being able to have almost like that fast follower effect enables efficiency. That can't happen with everything, of course. You know, there are times where you have to go where no man or woman has gone before, and be that first person, where you are the giant and not able to stand on the giant, but standing on the shoulders of giants allows you to see clearer into the distance. And if you're lucky and able to be that person standing on the giant's shoulders, then it's the better route to go, in my opinion.
One question, if I may, just along the same lines. Who's your giant? Who's that person who helps you see better?
Oh man. Who's my giant?
The parents, the hair salon.
Yeah, I would say I have a few potentials for giants. I think that my easiest route, just because I can have the early morning, also the lunch conversation, and also the dinner conversation and the family reunion conversation, and I take him up on it also, as my papa. And you know, I ask him, you know, where he's failed in business, where he's failed in relationships, where he's failed as being a father, where he's failed at being a husband, where he's failed at being a business owner, and then also where he's succeeded. I also, you know, my papa, which is a incredibly close to me. when I was a kid, he was Superman, and vibrant and energetic, and he was always more energetic for his age than his counterparts of people who were his age. And now he's getting to be an old man, and you get to watch what happens to the body, and what happens to Superman over time. And you get to ask questions and like look into the future of what's it all about? Like, what really mattered? What would you have gone back and spent more time on, or not cared about as much? And so I think I have the benefit of having a very personal relationship in my life, who's also been an entrepreneur and has made a shit ton of mistakes, but also has made an amazing amount of success and has raised children, and we're all alive and well and still here, and now we're having our own kids, and so that's success, right? I mean, he's got grandchildren sitting on his lap, he's got great grandchildren sitting on his lap. And so, what is it all about? And I think he would be my giant, that's for sure.
Yeah, I can tell, like the admiration you have for your mom and dad and your parents, and that's such a lovely thing to say. The last one, if I may, which is the one we talked about earlier, which is the Winston Churchill famously said, "If you go through hell, just keep going." I guess you agree with this, don't you?
Yeah. I think about this pretty often. So the example I could give is I was on a flight to Japan in February 2020, and I travel all the time, as you know, and it's not really necessarily easy travel. I'm not going on hour-long plates. I'm going in opposite directions of the world, only to go to the other opposite direction, and it's a lot of travel, and I love it, and I'm obviously fortunate and blessed to be able to have the opportunity to do that. But there was a point where it was getting a lot, and I was on a flight to Japan, and I'm like, what would it be like if I could just be home for 2 weeks straight? And I'm not talking about be home and then have to go to the office and still work. I mean, that's fine and great too. But what would it be like to be in my house? And then I could convince my wife, being like, okay, just because I'm home for 2 weeks doesn't mean now we have to go to Morocco because we've never been to Marrakesh before, and I have to entertain you for the week, and we're going to do something special, and then I got to come back and then go off and do business travel. Like, what would it be like just to be home for 2 weeks, not have to work, and just be in the moment and enjoy and whatever? And then, 3 weeks later, COVID happened, and then I couldn't get back on a plane for a long, long time. And then you're sitting there, and I'm going crazy the other way. Now I don't know what it's like to be home for a month, and then 2 months, and then 4 months, and then a year, where you're not traveling. And then it's be careful what you wish for type thing. And so I give that long back-winded story because, for entrepreneurship, like, you guys are building and running a business right now. I'm building and running a business right now. And there is that 10 minutes of champagne, and then there's 90 minutes of absolute pain. Not champagne, but pain. There's the champagne moment, and then there's the pain moment. And so, you know, I guess the easiest question I ask myself is like, if this was all taken away from me, how would I feel? And when there's moments that I want to crawl up into a ball because life is just getting way too hard, and there's people coming after you, and there's everything is going wrong, and you feel like you're running into the wind, and it's not at your back, it's coming at your face, and you're falling, and you can't get up, and what happens when the music stops? Like, what's better? Are you bored? You don't have the opportunities. You're not using your skill sets. You're not using the talents that wherever you stand that God gave you to be on this earth and be able to give back and be able to contribute to mankind. I think about that. And so, it would be easier just to quit and go be an employee, right? Look at the clock and be 9 to 5 and go home and play with my son or do whatever I need to do. But I don't think that would be the story that my son would be proud of when he goes up and he feels this whole thing about, what did my dad do or what didn't he do? It's a better story about what he did do and what did he do wrong and admit it, and what did he do right and then was humble about and kept on going. And so I don't want the music to stop. And I think when you're in hell, it's painful. Just take a deep breath, grab a cup of coffee, maybe don't go into work that day and do something for yourself. And that happens once a year or whatever, and just take that special day and do something for you. Grab your breath and thoughts and then just get back at it. But to say that you're going to quit, and you'd be surprised at how deafening the silence is when the music does stop. And I don't want that.
Yeah, such a great answer. Hopefully it's like short-term pain for long-term gain. That's what they say.
Yes,
So you
agreed.
feel the pain, but it's just like short-term, and the gain
Agreed.
is much more exciting.
Sure.
The last block, we're gonna basically just a fireside chat. So we're gonna ask you quick questions, and you share your immediate thoughts. So what's your favorite book and why?
Philosophy Who Needs It by Ayn Rand. Why? I have a lot of favorite books. I really do. Why? In my early 20s, I ended up like literally reading every book back to back to back by Ayn Rand. And her books taught me a gave me a huge improvement on my lexicon, on my own vocabulary. She uses very, very difficult words and unnecessarily big words at times. So she definitely taught me to think. But then also the book Philosophy Who Needs It is it actually teaches you about philosophy, and when you have a philosophy, it can be applied to big concepts and ideas, and you can leverage analogies and not necessarily just be in the moment on that black and white topic, but leveraging grander, more complex dynamic thoughts and having a philosophical approach to life. It saved me countless times. I can't even remember, but Ayn Rand, Philosophy Who Needs It, that was probably my favorite book. I love to read, so I have a lot of favorite books, but that was, if you're going to put the gun to my head on that one, that would probably be it.
Cracking. I haven't read that one. I should do. Yeah. Cool.
And what's your favorite film and why?
My favorite film? Another good one. I also love good films. My default answer on this one is, well, I have two, and I will give you two. So there hasn't been since 2006 a year that's gone by that I haven't watched the movie The Holiday with Cameron Diaz and Jude Law and Jack Black throughout the holiday season. And it's a brilliant movie. I mean, it's just like a wonderful, wholesome movie that like there's no sadness. It just makes you happy. It just makes you literally in the moment. Christmas, New Year's, that whole feeling. So The Holiday, that's probably my favorite fun, good feeling movie. But my actual favorite movie is Good Will Hunting. It's an older movie at this point. Robin Williams and Matt Damon out of Boston. I mean, brilliant, brilliant movie if you haven't seen it. And it just basically shows you that, this absolute savant genius boy out of South Boston, rough around the edges, ends up being this absolute brilliant human being. And then, talks about love and how complex human behavior is and growing and being almost too smart for your own good. And if you haven't seen it, you got to see it. It's Good Will Hunting and The Holiday, those two favorites.
Lovely. What advice do you often give but find hard to Take?
Forgive. Yeah, I've gotten significantly better at it. I said, fortunately, unfortunately, I have the memory of an elephant. And so, I don't forget much, to be honest with you. And forgiving has become easier, but I would say I come up with very, very good stories during advice and helping out friends and family and colleagues, et cetera, and, forgiving and moving on and just focusing on the end goal and moving forward to it. And when it comes time to implement that yourself, it's not necessarily the easiest.
Okay. The last two. Everyone in life is running from something and is running towards something. What are you running from and what are you running towards?
I am running from whew. I am running from the absolute colorful childhood dynamics and having to properly be able to support a family without wondering where next things are coming from, and making sure that your kids are completely taken care of, which has also probably been my strength as a human being of making me more tough and resilient. So, you know, you don't want to get, I don't want to make my kids too soft, but, you know, being able to create a very, very thick foundation, and making sure that the family is completely taken care of holistically is probably what I'm running from, and also what I'm running towards. I'm really, really big on family, and I love, you know, everything that I'm doing in terms of entrepreneurship and the industry that I'm a part of, for all the reasons I've already told you. But, you know, in terms of success, like, I personally believe that life goes by very, 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 very fast, like super fast. It's a blink of an eye. And sometimes it feels long, but for the most part, it's just going to go by too fast. And so, you know, if you have an opportunity to take care of your family and make sure that everyone is educated, not taken care of in terms of being spoiled, but taken care of in terms of how to live through this life with and without you involved, and set them up for success that way, is what I'm definitely running towards. What I'm running away from is probably just like the questions of, like, where does this come from next, and are we going to make sure it happens, type thing. That's what I'm running away from.
Lovely, lovely. The last question. If everything goes according to plan and we sit together in 5 years, where would Giovanni be?
Right where I am now, except more dense. I've been doing what I've been doing for a long time, and I don't honestly foresee much changing in terms of what I can offer the industry as a whole, and also what I want to be able to offer the industry. And, you know, I think there's going to be, in 5 years from now, there's going to be hopefully more natural successes where it's just the power of time that may make life slightly easier, not because it comes easier, it's just that you can deal with life easier. But in terms of what I want to be when I grow up, I think I'm there. I love the medical device industry. I don't want to leave it. I think 5 more years of education, of learning about failures and successes and what that means, and how to advise and be able to give that back to the ecosystem of first-time entrepreneurs and serial entrepreneurs, and building and bringing this community tighter and tighter together, so that the resources are shared and not disparately bespoke every single time a company starts, and it feels like they have to recreate the wheel, but rather than coming together and understanding, why are we actually developing medical technology? And, you know, there's a lot of synergies and there's a lot of advances in other industries. And if you stop and think, you know, the medical device industry is far behind in many ways in comparison to other industries. And so, you know, just being able to leverage, and I think being a staple or a dependable figure in the industry that is able to help and be able to build alongside this innovative and entrepreneurial ecosystem that we have. I want to be there. I think in 5 years from now, the only major difference is I want to make sure that, you know, my family's taken care of, and I have a little bit more stability in my life, where I frees me up for maybe an extra hour and a half a day to do more of what I'm already doing. I think that's really what I want.
Brilliant. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been lovely speaking to you, mate. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us today, for coming on the show, the first one, and sharing your nuggets of wisdom, your knowledge, and your expertise. I guess let's put the ball in your court. Any questions for us?
I want to know why you guys still continue to build this technology, and what keeps you going day in and day out.
Yeah, it's such a brilliant question. You know what? It's been really tough. It's been such a rocky road, but it's just unbelievable when your mum is next to you and you're building a technology which, you know, you think it's going to help your mum, And it's just unbelievable that we're about to commence the clinical trial, and my mum would be using the technology. She would be part of the clinical trial. I think that's the short answer. It's just indescribable, that feeling when you're building something and you look at your mum on a daily basis and you say, she's going to use this. I think that has been the oxygen that has been, because, you know, it feels like the entrepreneur's life is rosy and, you know, it's bright and breathing, everything is superb. No, it's a lot of pain. It's a rocky road to stuff. And when you get punched in the face, I think if you don't have that motivation, if you don't have that, you know, that thing which keeps you awake overnight and you want to continue, I think you just throw the towel. But I think having my mum with me and building something which could help my mum, but also potentially help over 1 billion, you know, patients with brain disorders. I think it's such a motivation, mate. We'll never give in. We're just here for the long run, and we'll make it happen. When there is a will, there is a way.
I have one more question for you. To end on a super positive note, and I love this even about our industry as well, but as entrepreneurs, what are you both very confident that you're doing right?
So, you want to take this one, or should I take Oh, mate, such a deep question. I think first thing first, what we've learned. So, over to you. Maybe you want to.
Yeah, I'm thinking, but I think the good thing from my side that when we would like to take a decision, we see our board, we say, okay, this person is the right person to go and discuss and to see his point of view. And later we say, me and Ziad, we say, okay, his point of view is different from our view. And this is based on his experience, and this is very important, and we take it in consideration. And I think this is very good, a very, very, very good point from ourselves, for that we are listeners and we take care in each point that we don't we are not hasty in taking any decision inside the company. So we really take care of each thing inside the company. So I think this is one of the very important stuff.
Yeah, over and about that, Leaves, mate. I think, look, the first thing you need to teach yourself is you have to unashamedly admit that you don't know anything. Just building it on the go. I think, you know, we don't really know whether technology. I mean, we do have some assumptions, but we have to be honest with ourselves. We're just managing the company and trying to figure things out. What we are sure about is we're never give in. We're never give in. Whatever happens, we'll be here. And when there is a will, there is a way. We've had so many events and circumstances and issues that you would say, oh, those people should just give in and stop it here and park it here. I think that's the only thing, our determination and that perseverance and persistence and that day one mentality. You come to the issue and you say, no, you know, no matter whatever happens, we're going to figure it out. I think that's the only thing we're sure about. Everything else, I think, may change. The technology, the trials, the business. You just need to tell yourself and educate and teach yourself that you don't really know anything. You just figure things out on the go.
I couldn't agree more with that one.
Yeah,
very good.
Brilliant, mate. It's been such a lovely show. It's been lovely speaking to you. And I just want to say, the finest, you know, kind of phrase is, I think you've been such a brilliant advisor. You've been such a lovely human being to talk to. I think you and I have had so many conversations in the past. Some of those conversations, they were not easy. We were literally going down the tubes. Things were not working. And you were there with your ears, listening to us, providing advice. You were not like you're not scared and saying, no, this company would just go under and I'd never work with those or never advise those people. I think I just want to pay an enormous tribute to you. We've learned so much from you, and I'm very much looking forward to continuing this journey with you. You know, and we are excited. We're really excited and proud to have you as part of this advisory board.
Thank you. And thank you very much for having me. And, you know, the early morning conversations, the late night conversations, the weekend WhatsApp messages, whatever it may be, the times that you guys came over to MedTech Malta with us last October and made that effort where we were able to meet each other in person. It's all been absolutely wonderful. And this goes back to that me being a part of the journey that I told you that I wanted to, and meeting people like yourself and watching that early stage journey and watching the, oh my God, my company is about to go under versus, oh my God, look at this win that we just got, and seeing the press releases come out, and then sometimes seeing the press releases come out and just in general, like knowing where they really came from, where the company almost went down like this. It's an amazing journey to be a part of. And you guys are absolutely intensely resilient entrepreneurs, and you're special people. So it's been an absolute pleasure.